Hey everybody, I just recently sent a survey to you asking what information would be useful for you, and one of the top answers was ways to de-stress with the current situation right now. And one of the things I found for myself is that there's information overload, and I'm sure it's not just me feeling that right now, but lots of you are too. And so what I found is that filtering that the best you can is really helpful. So what that means is not constantly checking your phone, not checking the news outlets. There's information we need to know that is useful for us in the daily practices we have, and what to do when you go to the grocery store, and financial aid from the government, and all those types of things. But checking once a day, maybe twice a day, if that, is enough to get caught up with all that information. So I would encourage you, first of all, to either put your phone down or literally turn it off, and or schedule some hours of, like, I'm going to check my phone for half an hour in the morning and the night, or a few minutes, whatever that looks like for you. But just put the phone down for a little bit and not check every notification or every new news update that happens, because it's not going to change what you do in the next 5 minutes. Talking about the de-stressing component, I was doing a little bit of homework and a colleague reminded me of this, and there was a guy named James Pennebaker, and he looked at what happens to us when we express some of the emotions or traumas that have happened in our life. And so there's studies from the 80s that were done, and he looked at what happened to people when they were writing those down. And it was called expressive writing, and it's still the same term they use now. But he started looking at that in a lot more detail, and he found that there were students, and this is from one of the papers that he wrote. But they asked students if they had a trauma sexually before the age of 17, and so they wrote a bunch of things down about that, and they found out that the ones who had a trauma and hadn't shared that secret, or hadn't shared those emotions, those respond. Here's the quote: "Those responding in the affirmative also reported much higher rates of symptoms and reported going to the doctor more than those answering no." And he went on to say this stress is not necessarily from a sexual trauma, which it could be, but not necessarily that. People who had any kind of trauma but who had kept it secret were those most likely to have a variety of health problems. And so the theory is, I'll keep reading here, just stick with me: concealing or holding back powerful emotions, thoughts, and behaviors, he reasoned, is itself stressful. Further long-term low-level stress could influence immune function and physical health. If keeping a secret about a trauma was unhealthy, it made sense that having people reveal the secret should improve health. So the result of this, and it's been studied in a bunch of different ways, but what he looked at is what happens when you actually write those things down. So that's what I would challenge you to do, and I really encourage you to do, is to write some of the things down you're feeling right now. I'm scared about this thing happening. I'm anxious about this. I'm worried about being sick. I'm concerned about my finances. I have a stress about a family member who is not well, or who is in a higher risk category for being sick. So he also said in this that it's not that important. It's not important at all, actually, the type of grammar you use, or spelling, punctuation. It's not even your penmanship that matters. Just get those ideas, those thoughts down. Here's how I'm feeling deep inside, and some things you probably haven't shared with anybody. But what you do at the end, though, and he would encourage you to not share that with someone else, but to rip that piece of paper up, or cut it up, throw it away, burn it, whatever it is, to get rid of it. And not necessarily that something magical happens with that tearing up of the paper, or the getting rid of it, but the fact that it's been released from you is a really important step. And the fascinating thing to me was another quote here, if I can read this to you. By the mid-90s, a consistent literature was beginning to emerge in health, clinical, and social psychology that validated the effectiveness of expressive writing in improving health. The underlying explanation of the effect is still debated, and continues to be debated today. So we don't understand why well, and psychologists and sociologists don't understand well why it happens, but what they see is that when you express those emotions on paper, something positive happens. So I'd love to hear from you about what you're doing. If you want to put something in the comments down below here, that would be great. If you want to just send me an email privately, I would really appreciate that too. I'm going to work on this myself also. And this is really important, I think. This is a really important one to share to other people too. So don't just keep this to yourself, because a lot of people are like, what can I do? I'm trying to move, I'm trying to eat well, I'm trying to stay on my sleep routine, all those kind of things. But just a few minutes per day. The original study was 20 minutes per day, but they've seen some that were 2 to 5 minutes per day that were still useful. and all of us can spare that time, especially with how things are going right now. So I hope that's helpful for you. Again, comment on there. I'd love to have some more conversation, but if it needs to be private, please send me an email also. Hope you guys are doing well, and we'll talk to you soon.